In this video, we're going to look at additional formatting options that we can apply to our chart and table within this report. We'll make some changes to the pie chart to illustrate a different option with respect to the data labels in the legend. We'll also make some changes to the table so when we have a multi-page report, the column headings will appear at the top of each page. So to get started, I'm going to move my table down a little bit. I'm going to give myself a little extra space for my pie chart, and I will also add some room at the top of the page for a heading. To exactly center the elements in your chart, you would want to use the settings here under the Properties pane to specify exactly where you want your elements placed and exactly the size that you would like each of them to be. I'm just going to approximate where the center of the page is. I know that my page is 10.5 inches wide, so that the center of my page is at 5.25 inches. So I'm just going to use that as a guide to estimate where I want the elements to be. I'm going to add a heading, and because this report is a list which supports printing multiple reports with one report execution, I'm going to place the heading of my report in a rectangle. So I'm going to select rectangle, and I'm going to click inside my rectangle, right click, and under rectangle properties, specify that I want there to be a page break just before this rectangle. It's a good practice to name your elements as well so that when there's an error, you have a better idea of what within your report needs to be corrected. So I'll call this title rectangle. And now I'm going to place my text inside the rectangle. I've created the rectangle only to create a page break. So now we're going to insert into the rectangle a text box, and we'll title the report Portfolio Review. We'll increase the font, center the text, make the text bold, and I will add another text box underneath my heading, and here we'll insert a placeholder, and we will place our household name inside this text box. So I'm going to right click, select expression, and the field I want is a household name. I will center, increase the size of the font, and make it bold. Okay, so we have these elements aligned. For the chart, I want to change the chart so that rather than have a legend and the percent in the chart, I want the labels to display my asset classification and the percent of the allocation. And to do that, the first thing I need to do is remove the legend. I'm going to then click on the chart, and over in the Properties pane under Custom Attributes, I'm going to change my pie label style to outside. My pie line color will be black. And then I'm going to change my data labels from percent to a combination of my classification and percent. So I click on the labels and right click, go to Series Label Properties. I'm going to click on the function icon, and here what I want to enter for my expression will be a combination of the classification and the percent with 2 decimal points. And essentially the way this reads is that the field, which would have been selected from here under Fields, double click on Classification. Of course, I need the equal sign. The field I'm choosing is the classification, and then the ampersand sign is designed to concatenate 2 fields. So the ampersand and then the quotes, there's also a colon and another quote, ampersand, and then the percent. So that'll give me the classification, colon, and the percent of that classification to the overall household. So I will click OK, and now the labels are changed to that expression just created. The next thing I want to do is add some formatting to my table. I'm going to make my table wider, and I'll give myself a little more room for my security descriptions. And then I will get the center of my table aligned with the center of my chart. Next, I'm going to change the color and font for my column header. So I will change the background color to blue and the font to white. And then the next thing I want to do is, if we have a table that will run for multiple pages, we need to apply a setting so that the column headings will repeat at the top of each page. And we can choose which rows we would like to repeat. In this case, we have a main heading and then a subheading, which the subheading being the account name followed by the securities in that account. I'm going to set this up so that when a page repeats, the column heading, the blue row, will repeat at the top of each page, and then the tan row will continue on to the next page if there's a page break in the middle of listing the securities for a given account. So to do that, I'm going to open up my groupings pane. Over here where it says column groups, I'm going to hit this drop down and select advanced mode. I need to now click on my table, And so again, we're in advanced mode, and each area here that's labeled as static is assigned to a specific row in my table. If I click on this static, that applies to the first row, the blue row. The next static applies to the next row, and so forth. If I click on the static down here, now I've activated this row. What I want to do is repeat the first two rows. And to do that, I'm going to click on static, and over in the properties pane, I'm going to select here for repeating on new page, set that as true, and keep within group, I'm going to change to after. And I want this row to repeat as well. I'm going to click on this static, which now has activated this second row, and I'll do the same thing. Repeat on new page. I'll set as true, and this has already been set to after. So now we'll run this. I'll click View Report, and the report that will be produced will look like this. Rather than have a legend with just the percents in the center or within the chart, you have your classification and percentages outside the chart. You have a heading at the top, and you also have the headings appear on the second page. This is page 2. I'm actually going to apply one more change to the report. Instead of having the row that subtotals for the account name be labeled as total, as well as the last line, which is the grand total, I'm going to change it so that it's clear that this row is a subtotal for the account name. So I'm going to, after total, I'll create a space and right click. I'm going to click on Create Placeholder. Under Value, I'll click on the function icon, click on Fields, and the field I want is the account name. So now what we have is total space, and then the account name will appear after the total, so it's clear that this total is a subtotal for that account. So now I will click Run, View Report, and the report will look like this. You have your headings, and if we had multiple reports, this heading would be at the top of each page of a new household. Our labels have now changed to be a combination of the classification and the percent allocation. And then also these column headings will be at the top of each page. So since we have the IND 401k account, the page break comes before all of those positions are listed. When we go to page 2, it's clear that we're continuing on with holdings for that account. And then we have a total here that indicates that's the total for that account. So this video provided some additional details on formatting reports and charts. In future videos, we'll cover additional tips and formatting options that you have available, but this will provide you some information on generating a nicely formatted report.